All right. Hello, everybody. So today I am going to read chapter 21, Ron. Okay. So let's see. Can I zoom in? All right, good. So are you ready? Ron. We're going to learn about Ron today. Ron had curly hair and little feet. I want to play kickball, he said. You can't play, said Terrence. Get out of here, said Dee Dee. Scram, said Jason. I want to play kickball, said Ron. Well, you're not playing, said Terrence. Beat it. Ron stomped across the playground to the hopscotch area. Jenny was playing hopscotch with Louis. Jenny was on 9. Louis was still on 4. But it was his turn. I want to play kickball, Ron said. So go play kickball, said Louis. Terrence won't let me play, said Ron. Louis walked with Ron to the kickball field. Hey, what about our hopscotch game? Jenny asked. You won, said Louis. I just beat Louis in hopscotch, Jenny announced. Leslie, Rondi, and Allison flocked around her. Hey, Louis, Damon shouted. Do you want to play kickball? All right, said Louis. Ron and I will play. We'll both play. No, said Terrence. Ron isn't playing. Anyone who wants to play can play, said Louis. No, he can't, said Terrence. It's my ball. It isn't your ball, said Louis. You gave it to me, said Terrence. I gave it to you to share, said Louis. If you can't share it, you can't have it. Oh, all right, said Terrence, but I get it. I get to pitch. Ron and I will stand everybody, Louis announced. All right, said Jason. We'll kill them. We'll murder them, said Dee Dee. We'll smash them. When they say we'll kill them or we'll murder them, that means that they're gonna win. They want to win the game. Okay? We'll see, said Louis. Ron pitched and Louis played the other 8 positions. 20 minutes later, they finally got 3 outs. The score was 21-0. Ron was up first. Infield in, shouted Damon. Everybody stood within 10 feet of home plate. All right, Ron, Louis shouted. Kick it over their heads. Ron kicked the ball only 3.5 feet. Todd picked it up and threw him out. Louis was up. Everybody ran back to the edge of the outfield. Still Louis kicked the ball over their heads for a home run. Everybody ran all the way back in again for Ron's up. He kicked the ball only 2 feet. Dee Dee tagged him out. Louis kicked another home run. Ron then kicked the ball a foot and tripped over it on his way to first base. 3 outs. Ron and Louis held the other team to only 5 runs the next inning. That was because the bell rang. Lunch was finally over. Louis and Ron lost 26-2. Ron had a wonderful time. The next day, Ron said, I want to play kickball. You can't play, said Terrence. Get out of here, said Jason. Scram, said Dee Dee. I want to play kickball, Ron told Louis. Louis walked with him to the kickball field. Ron and I will stand all of you. Everybody liked the teams. Ron pitched while Louis played the other 8 positions. They lost 57-2. After the game, Louis took Ron aside. Listen, Ron, he said, why do you always want to play kickball? You can't kick, you can't field, you can't even run to first base. You just get smashed every time. Hey now, wait a second, said Ron. Don't go blaming it all on me. You're half the team too, you know. And with that, he punched Louis in the stomach. And he punched a lot harder than he kicked. Oh no, they were almost bullying Ron. That is not okay. Right? We should all be able to play with one another. Chapter 22, The 3 Erics. In Mrs. Jewell's class, there were 3 children named Eric. Eric Fry, Eric Bacon, Eric Ovens. And they were known throughout the school for being fat. Eric Fry sat at this end of the room, Eric Bacon sat in the middle of the room, and Eric Ovens sat at the end of the room. There was a joke around Wayside School that if all 3 of Erics were ever at the same end of the room at the same time, the school would tip over. Eric Bacon hated jokes like that. That's not surprising. After all, he wasn't even fat. In fact, he was the skinniest kid in Mrs. Jewell's class, but nobody seemed to notice. The other 2 Erics were fat. Just so everyone just thought that all Erics were fat. But I'm not fat, Eric Bacon insisted. What's your name? Asked Jason. Eric, said Eric Bacon. Then you're fat, Jason concluded. And pretty soon, skinny little Eric Bacon, the skinniest kid in Mrs. Jewell's class, had nicknamed Fatso. Eric Fry really was fat. He was also the best athlete in Mrs. Jewell's class. His body was solid muscle. However, nobody ever noticed. The other two Erics weren't very good at sports. Eric Ovens was clumsy. Eric Bacon was a good athlete for his size, but because he was so skinny, he didn't have much power. So naturally, everybody just assumed that Eric Fry was clumsy and weak. After all, his name was Eric. Whenever the other kids chose up teams, Eric Fry was the last one picked. They never even noticed his home runs or the fabulous catches he made. Like all great athletes, he made the impossible look easy. Of course, the other kids did notice the one time that he dropped the ball. Eric Fry was playing right field. Terrence belted a deep fly to left. Eric Fry raced all the way across the field, across the ball, and at the last second dived at it. He caught it in midair on his fingertips. But as he hit the ground, the ball squirted loose. Well, what do you expect from Butterfingers? Said Stephen. And since that time, Eric Fry has had the nickname Butterfingers. Eric Ovens was the nicest person in Mrs. Jewell's class. He treated everyone equally and always had a kind word to say. But because his name was Eric, everyone thought he was mean. Fatso was mean because everyone called him Fatso. Butterfingers was mean because he always had to play right field. So naturally, everyone just assumed that Eric Ovens was also mean. They called him Crab Apple. Good morning, Allison, said Eric Ovens. How are you? Lay off, Crab Apple, will ya? Answered Allison. If you don't have something nice to say, then don't say it at all. All three of the Erics had nicknames. It was better that way. Otherwise, when someone said, "Hey, Eric," no one knew whom to talk to. One time, all the Erics would answer, and the next time, none of them would answer. But when somebody said, "Hey, Crabapple," then Eric Ovens knew they were talking about him. And if someone said, "Hey, Butterfingers," Eric Fry knew they were talking about him. And when someone said, "Hey, Fatso," Eric Bacon knew that he was being called. Chapter 23, Allison. Allison had pretty blonde hair and always wore a skinny blue windbreaker. A windbreaker is like a jacket, okay? The windbreaker was the same color as her eyes. She was best friends with Rondi. Rondi had blonde hair too, but she was missing her two front teeth. Allison had all of her teeth. Allison used to say that she knocked Rondi's teeth out. Allison was very pretty, so all the boys in Mrs. Jewell's class teased her, especially Jason. But Allison said, "Leave me alone, or I'll knock your teeth out like I did Rondi's." The boys didn't bother her for that. After that, one day Allison brought a tangerine for lunch. She took the peel off in one piece. Miss Mush, the lunch teacher, walked up to her and said, "Allison, may I have your tangerine?" she asked. Miss Mush always gave food to the children, so Allison was happy to give her tangerine to Miss Mush. Miss Mush shoved it in her mouth and swallowed it in less than 4 seconds. Allison left the lunchroom and walked down to the library. The lunchroom was on the 15th story. The library was on the 7th. Allison already had her book. She just went to the library because it was nice and quiet in there. The librarian walked up to Allison. "What are you reading?" she asked. Allison told her the name of the book. "That sounds like a good book," said the librarian. "I never read that one. May I borrow it?" The librarian always lent books to the children. Allison was glad to be able to return the favor. She gave the librarian the book, then walked down the stairs outside to the playground. All of Allison's friends were playing freeze tag. Allison didn't feel like playing. She reached into the pocket of her sky blue windbreaker and took out a tennis ball. She bounced it a couple of times on the ground. Louis came up to her. "Hi, Allison," he said. "May I play with your tennis ball?" Louis always gave balls to the children. Allison happily gave her the ball to Louis. Louis threw the ball all the way to the other side of the playground. Then he went chasing after it. Allison didn't feel like doing anything. Jason ran up and tagged her. "You're frozen," he said. "Get out of here before I knock your teeth out," said Allison. Jason shrugged his shoulders and left. Allison went back inside and up the 30 flights of stairs to Mrs. Jewell's room. The lunch period wasn't over yet, but Allison didn't feel like doing anything else. She had given her food to the lunch teacher, her book to the librarian, and her ball to the yard teacher. She went inside her classroom. Mrs. Jewell was there. "Oh, Allison, I'm glad you're here," said Mrs. Jewell. "I'm having trouble with an arithmetic problem." Remember, arithmetic is math. "Maybe you can help." "Sure," said Allison. Mrs. Jewell always helped the children with her problems. Allison was happy to help. "How do you spell chair?" "Chair," said Allison. "Yes, you're right," said Mrs. Jewell. "I knew it wasn't Chare, but I couldn't remember what it was." "That's not an arithmetic problem," said Allison. "That's spelling." "Yes, you are right again," said Mrs. Jewell. "I always get the two mixed up." The bell rang. The lunch period was over. Allison could hear the other children running up the stairs. "Allison," said Mrs. Jewell, "you learned a very important secret today. And I don't want you to tell any of the other children, not even Ronby." "What was that?" said Allison. She didn't even know she had learned a secret. She loved secrets. "You learned that children are really smarter than their teachers," said Mrs. Jewell. "Shh. Oh, that's no secret," said Allison. "Everybody knows that. Are you guys smarter than your teacher?" "You guys are very smart." All right. Chapter 24. Damon. Damon had hazel eyes with a little black dot in the middle of each of them. The dots were called pupils. So was Damon. He was a pupil in Mrs. Jewell's class. Mrs. Jewell was about to show the class a movie. She turned out the lights when it was dark. Damon's pupils got bigger. "Damon," said Mrs. Jewell, "run downstairs and ask Louis if he'd like to see the movie with us." Damon ran down the 30 flights of stairs to the playground. He stepped outside as Lois was hooking up a tetherball. "Hey, Louis," Damon called, "do you want to see a movie in Mrs. Jewell's class?" Louis rubbed his chin. "What movie?" Damon shrugged his shoulders. "I don't know," he said. "I'll be right back." Damon then ran all the way back up the stairs to the 30th floor. "Louis wants to know what movie," Damon said. "Does he want to know the name of the movie or what the movie is about?" asked Mrs. Jewell. "I don't know. I'll ask him," said Damon. Damon raced back down the stairs out to the playground. Louis, do you want to know the name of the movie or what the movie is about?" he asked. "The name," said Louis. "Okay," Damon said. Damon hurried back up the 30 flights of stairs. He took the steps 2 at a time. "Turtles," said Mrs. Jewell. Damon turned around, took a deep breath, then ran back down the stairs. "Turtles," Damon told Louis. "Hey, that might be good," said Louis. "What's it about?" "I'm not sure," said Damon. "I'll find out." Then what did Damon do? Damon raced back up the stairs. But first, he stopped to take a drink of water. "What's it about, Mrs. Jewell?" asked Damon. "Turtles," said Mrs. Jewell. Damon rushed back down the stairs to tell Lois. "Turtles," said Damon. "No thanks," said Lois. "I don't like turtles. They're too slow." Damon lowered his head and slowly walked the 30 flights of stairs. His legs were so sore. He could hardly breathe, and his side ached. By the time he got to Mrs. Jewell's class, the movie was over. All right, class, said Mrs. Jules. I want everybody to take out a piece of paper and a pencil and write something about turtles. Damon had missed the movie, but he still could have written something about turtles. Turtles are too slow, but now he couldn't find his pencil. It just wasn't his day. What's the matter, Damon? Asked Mrs. Jules. Well, I can't find my pencil, said Damon. Class, Damon's pencil is missing, Mrs. Jules announced. What did it look like, Damon? She asked. It was long and yellow, said Damon. It had a black point at one end and a red eraser at the other. I found it, said Todd. Here, by the blackboard. Yes, that's it, said Damon. No, there it is. It's in the corner by the wastebasket, said Crabapple. Maybe that's it, said Damon. Here it is, said John. It's been in my desk the whole time. No, here it is, in my hand, said Joe. I found it, said Roundy. Here it is, said Allison. I have it, said DJ. I found it, said Myron. Which one is yours, Damon? Asked Mrs. Jules. Damon studied each pencil. They all look like mine, he said. Fortunately, at that moment, Lois walked into the classroom. He handed Damon his pencil. You dropped this when you were telling me about the movie, said Lois. Thanks, said Damon. Okay, class, said Mrs. Jules, so that we have no more mix-ups, I want everybody to write their name on his pencil. Damon spent the rest of the day trying to write his name on his pencil. Damon's pencil couldn't write on itself. It was just like his beautiful hazel eyes with the black dots in the middle. They could see everything except themselves. All right, those are some funny chapters. So Damon went up all the way up 30 floors and then back down again, like 5 times. Probably took him a very long time. All right, guys, we'll read chapter 25 and the end of the book tomorrow.